Hello, welcome to another episode of Time Sports on the Beat with me, K. Rajan, of the New State Times. Today in the studio, we have two guests who are my good friends. Our first guest, Christopher Raj, the CEO of Shekinah PR, has nearly 30 years in sports PR and media. He worked with AFC and FIFA, covering several global events. And he was a New State Times sports journalist as well, before founding Shekinah PR in 2011, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And he also has served in FA of Malaysia, Executive Committee, and was a board of director of the Malaysian Football League as well. Thanks for coming, Chris.
Thank you, Rajan.
And our second guest, my boss, the sports editor of the New State Times. He has 20 years experience in the industry. Again, thank you for making time, Ajit. Thank you for making time, Chris.
Thank you, Rajan. Pleasure to be here.
Rajan. Pleasure.
I think we have discussed a lot, talked a lot about Malaysian football, formally and informally, and finally we have this session. I think I known you guys for 15 years. To have you guys together in a place in this podcast it's quite exciting for me, because we are now going to share what we have gained knowledge in this industry, different perspective, an editor, PR, and a guy who have done things in Asian football and Malaysian football. Today we are going to talk about the M League. There's plenty of criticism, there's plenty of opinions from the fans, especially Malaysian football fans. The gate collection have been erratic. Most football clubs are struggling to pay their wages. The quality of the league also have been being questioned. There are some positive things. There's always positive and negative thing when it comes to Malaysian football. It's your perspective over it. Do you see, Chris, how is the position, or do you see that there's a light end of the tunnel? Do you see? Can you see the things that affecting our football, and overall a picture from your point of view? How is it going on?
Thank you, Rajan. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here with two legends of the industry. Ajit Pal, my ex-colleague of New State Times. Being here always brings me a lot of good memories, for sure. It's great to be here. Well, Malaysian football, Rajan, is never short of dramas, both on and off the field. But of course, this year, I would say, the signs were there last year as well. But I think this year, the signs are greater in that sense. Yeah. And we can see the repercussions of decisions made in certain aspects of the game, change of calendar, longer months of playing, due to many criteria that was set. We can see the outcome. Yeah, we have a longer league. Teams have to pay more. Salary issues. You can see the dwindle of numbers in the gate collections and all that. I think the league is going through a phase of survival. Yeah, it's and I think it happens around the world. And I can make some comparisons to some leagues in Asia for people to understand, or the listeners to understand. And I will go straight to one of the leagues. The Saudi Pro League, for example, was started in 1974. And then it became the Russian Pro League in 2024. When they started, the investment in 2023 was 978 million US. Last year, the league crashed at 400 million US.
Oh, okay.
This is Saudi Pro League, the guys with money. And I give you another example. When we talk about fans coming to the stadium and all that, while our fans, obviously, the crowd has really dropped tremendously, no doubt about it. Never in the history of 20 years in football industry, a match of a match like Terengganu and JDT playing in Terengganu, they had 6,000 paying crowd. Those days, I think Ajit Pal will remember, people will be breaking the gates and barricades to buy the tickets. And we go back to example of the Saudi Pro League. On Sunday, Al Nassr played Al Weda club, and the attendance was 424.
Why is that?
So, I think there has come a time when people pick and choose the matches now. All right, which match to go, which match to attend. And also, while the match tickets and all that more or less have gone up by a certain percentage, people's income and salary somehow have been stagnant. We take a Malaysian aspects of it. A father who earns maybe about $4,000 a month. All right, family of 5. Gate ticket is about 35 ringgit or 30 ringgit cheapest. Family of 5 is $150, excluding petrol and toll. Not forgetting the burger he has to buy, the drink he has to buy, the refreshment. I think all in all, you spend about $300 in one game. Now, for somebody who earns $4,000 a month, that's a lot, right?
Yes.
And eventually now they pick and choose. And you look at the matches in JDT, ACL matches full, because they are playing top tier football, top class football, and people find it's worth paying that kind of money, and the stadiums are full. But when they play in the local matches, people pick and choose, right? So I think if the same family were to go for 3 or 4 games in a month, you're talking easily about $1,500, and that's a lot of money for a normal Malaysian family. Okay, and you're playing long season. The average crowd in Saudi Pro League now, I was reading the data provided, is only 7,850 average.
Oh, the big difference.
Big difference. Except for the matches Al Nassr playing, even with all the big names, they're not playing full capacity.
Here averagely, what's the...
Here is also same, somewhere around 6,000, 5,500. There are some matches, team number 12 and 13 playing, only getting 500 people at the stadium.
Yeah.
And the league also is going through different challenges, in the sense that when you have teams that are not paying salaries, all the negative publicity that comes out of it, people are not motivated to go to the stadium. You know, so I think these are some of the, main issues that are affecting the league and the teams.
I do feel the spillover effect from COVID, still plenty of recovery need to do, especially financially, by these clubs.
Yep.
But do you see light at the end of the tunnel? What do you see, Haji? Do you see, both of you guys, will this situation persist, or yes, it's a phase. Eventually you have to overcome. Survival of the fittest. Those who couldn't compete, they would die out. We have seen this, so many clubs folded. But do you see there might be some positive towards the end of this phase?
I think it has come a time when teams have to be realistic with themselves. You know, be honest with yourself. I mean, we don't mention names, but some teams have not paid 11 months' salary. You know, I mean, it's unthinkable.
Doesn't make sense, right?
Unthinkable. How could a team survive 11 months? How could the players survive, the family and etc.? And what worries me is this kind of players moving into financial distress, you know, financial difficulties. And it's not just the player, the wife, the kids, the family, everybody is dragged into it. I'm very sure the banks must be calling them. You know, we already seeing reports on social media, you know, 4 or 5 months housing installments not being paid. I mean, we all are working, we all have bills to pay. And imagine if we go through the same, you know, what kind of mental torture we could be going through. So if you ask me, I think the team owners have to be realistic. If you cannot play in the Super League, then don't play in the Super League.
True.
Don't play in the Super League, because you are hurting the industry. Not only the industry, you are hurting an entire family that are depending on this survival on this game called football.
It's cruelty.
It's cruel. It is really cruel. If you can't, whatever it is, no matter what is your position, you are a well-known businessman or you are an owner of the team, and if you can't play with foreigners, why have the foreigners? Right? The problem is everybody wants to be JDT. Everybody using JDT as a benchmark. JDT, if you ask, in my opinion, JDT is like 10 years ahead of time. Selangor, with the way they have sustained themselves, they are maybe 5 or 6 years ahead of other teams. These two teams have gone ahead of time.
Yeah.
Terengganu, we never heard Terengganu having salary issues. Never. First time in history, Terengganu is having salary problems. So the signs are there, and I think the owners have to look at it very, very deeply. And if you can't play in the Super League, please settle the debts and move on to play in another.
But if they decide not to play in the Super League, I mean, basically now probably only 2 or 3 teams are paying salaries promptly and all
Correct.
that. So they will not have enough teams to play in the Super League. How do
You need 8 teams for
8 teams.
8 teams minimum to play, and that goes through with the criteria of club licensing and everything
That
else.
means how many rounds do they play? I mean,
I think that's how. Look at Kuwait. Kuwait only plays 2 rounds of the league, but the league goes on, and they are also doing well in terms of their own national team matches and etc. Right? There are teams who have lesser number of clubs playing in the league play 2 rounds or 3 rounds. Now, this is where teams that are struggling to pay salaries in Super League, perhaps they should consider playing in the AFL. AFL, if you ask me, I know people might have AFL might not be the solution, but playing in Super League, having 12, 13 million debts, and then you come and play in Premier League, you add on to your debts, it doesn't make sense. All right? Why don't you play in AFL, which only costs you about 3.5 to 4 million ringgit? Stabilize your house, clean up your house, right? Put things in order, and when you are financially stronger, come back to the Super League.
There's always taking the step back. We know KL, they went to 3rd division, the old 3rd division, and stayed there, and then slowly came up.
Yes, many top English Premier League teams have gone down to N-Power Championship, rebuilt and came up. Cardiff is a classic example. Many years in N-Power, went up to play in the Premier League and then came back again. So, I mean, club owners must be, I'm not saying responsible, they must be realistic. They must be realistic with what they can do, what they can't do. All right? And you look at teams like Kuching City FC and Penang FC. Why are they governed well? Penang FC, classic example, because the team belongs to the state. They have certain budget. They operate within the budget.
yeah.
They are among the smaller teams that
Smaller teams.
live within their means.
Yeah. Last year, Kuching City FC was one of those teams, I think second team, I think, who actually made profit.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
That's very
Kuching.
Kuching City FC.
Oh.
Because operating in a very tight budget. But then again, is that okay for you to finish number 11 or 12 or 13 and you still make profit? You know? So it has the pros and cons, Rajan.
It's again, you have mentioned this twice, the realistic part of it.
Yeah.
There's always this fear, like big teams, Terengganu, Pahang. Oh, when we go down, we cannot come back. We don't see a lot of success story. A very recent success story should be KL City.
Yeah.
They were in the 3rd division, slowly come up. They managed to win a Malaysia Cup as well, and did well in the Asian level. Asia Cup, AFC Cup.
AFC Cup.
But less of these success stories maybe brings that fear. Nobody want to fail, and we see Manchester United, the European clubs, even Real Madrid, Barcelona, they fail, they go down, they come up. But here, the fear of failing, it's just that thick that the owners, the club coaches, the players don't want to take the risk to go down and come back again.
I think it is time, whether you like it or not, Rajan, and of course Ajit Pal. If we don't do something about it, the league will die off.
Yeah.
Because everything that goes up has to come down. And then you start the rebuilding process again. And in saying that, now when we look at the numbers, there are clubs, put 8-9 clubs together based on my assumption or some kind of calculation I've done, easily would be owing about 37 to 38 million.
Wow.
That's a lot of money collectively.
Wow.
Now this is payments, salaries, payments to the government agencies and etc.
Statutory payments.
Exactly. So now the debt is only going to get bigger. It's only going to get bigger because don't forget, when you don't pay your statutory payments, it's all compounded interest.
Yeah.
It's compounded interest, right? And the number and government agencies are not going to give you a tax relief or whatever it is on it because it's payment due to players.
You still have
right?
to pay.
You still have to pay. So I'm not sure how long the clubs can sustain in that manner. So it is better for them to take a step back, move back, reorganize your house, right? And then you come back to a bigger house, a better house, you know.
Ajit, you have seen football, the quality of the players. Do you see dropping down from the Super League, the competitive levels, when if the players, the Super League standard players, maybe former international or budding who players who could play for the national team, if they drop down to the AFL, the third division, semi-pro league A1, do you see players losing their competitive edge, the game that played at the higher level and the lower level?
There are pros and cons. Some players who just, some players are just signed to sit on the bench. They don't get any exposure. And if they play in the AFL Cup for other teams, they will get more matches. But the competitive level is still questionable, because in the AFL we have read stories about teams,
Yeah.
players they don't attend training because of salary
Semi-pro
issues.
players.
And teams starting with 9 players first, and then second half,
Yeah.
they have 11. So I think the AFL is not very healthy as well.
Correct.
I think something must be done. MFL, I think they have set the standard too high for the Super League. I believe so. I mean, they have done a good job, They have tried to train the clubs how to run a football team, these inexperienced owners and all that. But I think setting, a maximum of 9 foreign players for each team, I think it's it's just too many players. Of course, there is an option. You don't sign 9 players, you sign 5 players, 4 players. But end of the day, your obligation is on the sponsors. The sponsors want you to do well. So, of course, you will try to sign 9 players. And, most of them will overspend. They got no money to pay the players. So, I think MFL has to look at that, setting the standards a bit more, the bar a bit slightly lower. But then again, JDT needs to compete in the Asian club competitions. Probably they need, because Asian Champions League, there's no limits of foreign signings and all that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, JDT has made Malaysia proud. I mean, probably they need the players as well to be competitive in the Asian level as well.
That's where the question rises. Most football fans question this: hey, our league is only helping one club, but you cannot afford to punish a club that is run well.
Yeah.
So we are stuck in a position. People think MFL is obliging JDT, but they are doing what the Saudi clubs doing. Thai clubs are doing. They also are free to sign as much as possible imports.
Look at Buriram.
So
Never foreign players.
how do we get this balance of being supportive of a Malaysian football club who wants to do well, who are ambitious, at the same time their gap with the others are just too vast. Like you said, 8 teams in the top tier, the Super League. Do you see that will be the direction that MFL, the Super League, the top level football should head?
First thing, Rajan, when you run a pro league, right? The pro league comes with its own consequences, right? You are tied up with the AFC club licensing. You have the criterias.
Additional.
You have the 2025 criteria, sub-criteria, maybe 10 or 15 on each of the licensing. You have the under 17, under 19, and all this, right? Now, to play in that level, you need all the following. All right? So, for example, you can't build a house and then without the rooms and the bathrooms and the foyer. You have to complete it. So the club licensing is there for the clubs to follow the criteria and follow accordingly. But, for example, the rule of 9 foreign players, if I'm a club owner and I know I only have $6 million or $7 million budget, I won't sign 9 foreigner. I perhaps will sign 2 foreigners from Thailand or 2 from Indonesia or 2 from Vietnam. Because I know I don't have the budget. I will not be paying any one of them in US dollars. I'll be paying them in their local currency, in Thai baht or rupiah or in ringgit Malaysia. Because all those players who sign in US dollar, they are in trouble simply because there's so much of fluctuation in US dollar. You sign at 4.24.
Yeah.
The currency at the point is 4.7275. So, financially, they don't take all this into account, right? So this is where the experience, the maturity comes in place, right? You look at Penang FC, but two foreigners, they're doing pretty well, right? Because the state made it very clear they don't have the budget for 9. No, I think like I said earlier, we need to be very honest where we are, and then we need to bite the bullet, right? And I think MFL should have an engagement with all the stakeholders, the CEOs, and the real owners, because the CEOs are employed,
Yeah.
right? They need to have engagement with the real owners, the chairmen of the club, and talk about the next season. How many clubs are able to participate? How many clubs are not able to participate? I agree with Ajipal 100%. AFL 2 has its own issues and problems. Perhaps they can have AFL 1 and Division 1, Division 2, and bring down the teams who can't afford to pay as well, right? And also you can mix and match with under 23 because Piala MFL doesn't exist anymore. Now, one of the reasons why Piala MFL also doesn't exist, that 3 or 4 million that they actually save can be a breathing space for the clubs. They can use that fund for something else.
Okay.
Right? So that is why Piala MFL has been scrapped out.
Which one? That one, the current MFL Cup?
MFL Cup will not exist. Yeah, it will not be around for the next season.
Oh,
right?
confirm already?
Yeah. Then if you want, and this is where if they want to introduce the Premier League again, it's not a good idea.
Reason?
Because you are again going to choke the clubs to spend more money.
Setting up
Another disastrous outing for the clubs. Because if I'm playing in AFL, I'm spending 3 million, and I'm promoted to Premier League, I will spend 8 million ringgit.
But wouldn't that create another problem where
Correct.
another group of talented under 23 players, late bloomers, they're going to drop down?
Yeah.
We don't know whether they will be employed.
If you ask me from a professional setting, Rajan, if you're good as an under 23 player, you have to play for the first team already.
Yeah, yes, true.
You need to play there.
No, there are no leagues in the world except for the Malaysian league. We have under 23. In Asia, in the 47 countries in Asia, 47 Confed, we are the only country with under 23 league.
When did AFC remove that criterion that
You
the
really
under 23
Under
tournament?
23 league was never a criteria of AFC.
Because I think
No.
we saw a statement from AFC.
No. Under 23, if I'm not mistaken, was never a criteria in the club licensing. We introduced, this is one of the reasons why I had to share the historical of the under 23 with then the former CEO Jojo to understand. Under 23 was created when Dato' Ong Kim Swee was the under 23 coach. And when they didn't qualify, his observation 5 years, 6 years ago was that the under 23 boys were not getting enough matches.
Okay.
Then Ong, who was the technical director as well, made a recommendation to MFL. He made a recommendation to FAM Technical Committee to implement under 23. So those who are not playing get enough matches. That is how the under 23 league came about.
Okay.
So the proposal came from Jawatan Kuasa Technical Committee of FAM to MFL board. So that is the history of the under 23 MFL Cup. So now that under 23 players are all back playing in first team or second team or whatever, it makes no sense to have the under 23 there. And the clubs are also complaining that they can't afford to run the team.
That means next season a team will have a total of 3 teams instead of 4.
Yes, correct.
Senior team, the
17s.
So I mean,
and
under
the
President
21.
Cup and
President
Youth
Piala
Cup. lah.
Belia, correct.
But
Which
you were mentioning that, that teams that, if the Premier League is reintroduced and those promoted from the AFL Cup will spend more. But what about now? You don't have a second tier and the champions and the runners-up in the AFL
still
are given the choice of getting how they would have to spend triple their budget probably. I mean,
This
or
is
double.
one of the discussions we had, because if an AFL team that's paying a particular player, let's say 1,000 ringgit playing allowance, he goes to Premier League, he'll be expecting $5,000.
Yes.
Now, definitely I can tell you the clubs cannot afford to pay. The 15 clubs, give you an example. Harini FC were the champions of AFL,
Yes.
correct? Last year. In the current league standing, they are the bottom. and there are 6 or 7 AFL clubs also owing 2 or 3 months' salaries. So this problem, Ajit, is across board.
Yeah.
Super League and AFL. In AFL, the figures are slightly smaller. We are not talking in millions, lah,
Yes, yes.
right? Because salary gap very small. But in Super League, we are talking about millions. Now, if I'm an AFL owner and my budget is only 4 million ringgit, I know if I play in Premier League with the club licensing criteria, I will need 9 million. I will not play because I know I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Because the moment you play Premier League, you have to play in a proper stadium structure. You have to bring
You
in
need
the
all the
security arrangement.
infrastructure.
All the infra comes in place, right? There's additional costs.
And the
right?
team needs about how many million?
Premier League.
Ah,
Premier League easily 9 million.
Super League?
Super League, you're talking about 12 to 13.
That one is a decent team with 2, 3 foreign signings.
There are also teams operating in 8 million ringgit. Premier League maybe between 6 to 8. AFL, there are teams operating 2.5 to 4.
Wouldn't you see dropping down to the Premier League? These semi-pro A1 league clubs, they now need to have a President Cup, a Belia team.
No, they don't need to have.
They don't need to.
They don't need to have. Because semi-pro, there's no club licensing.
Okay.
There's no club licensing.
So we will have to rely on the top tier 8 Super League teams probably to cater to the youth development with the under PL Belia, PL President. Would that reduce the number of talents coming in?
I don't think so. I thought I was just saying the other day to somebody, our Piala Belia, Piala President also needs to be revamped. He's been too stagnant, right? We are opening to the clubs and states. I suggested to one of the members in the committee, I said, why don't you look at opening up to the international schools?
Yeah.
We have close to about 70 to 80 international schools. There is an international league that is running in Mount Kiara.
Yeah,
Right?
they have their own league.
Right, they have their own league, foreign players, foreign coaches are coaching, and those schools can afford to pay and play. Why don't we open up our Piala Belia to all the top international schools to play?
And then what did they...
They say it's a great idea. I never thought about it, but I said, why don't you think about it? So why Piala Belia has to be like only state, AMD, couple of clubs? Open up. Let's all the international school that has place, because they have like some international schools are tied up with the Real Madrid Academy, Villarreal, Tottenham Hotspurs and all that. So let them come and play. When you play, there are also Malaysians who are playing there.
Yeah.
So your talent pool becomes bigger, and chances are these players could be good, perhaps better than some clubs and some state. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't see it. So I think we need to find new ways and means in revamping the youth league and giving it a better identity. Not focusing so much on Super League teams to do 17 and 19. Open up the system, Open up the system. I feel like IPT should play, a lot of university boys are there. Today, Rajan, you won't believe it, parents are willing to pay $700 a month for training for their son to play. Those days, never. Now they're willing to pay and play. They're willing to book the AstroTurf, pay $1,400, and so there is a lot of the industry input is happening, but I think FM needs to create the pathway for these teams to come.
So it's interesting to revamp. We have been following this traditional under 19 Piala Belia, and then you go President Cup. I think it has been stagnant, and I think the numbers of players from these two tournaments progressing and reaching the Super League also quite been challenging. The numbers are not healthy actually.
Just to add on, Selangor, 1,680 teams are playing across board.
The youth teams and seniors.
1,680 was their number for 2024.
Wow.
But you're not tapping into the national level.
No, I mean, whether tapping into national level is secondary, but there's opportunity to play.
But do we have scouts are looking at these youngsters? I mean, we have many youth tournaments, the Supreme League, and a few. You said like the international schools, they have their own league. Do FM actually send their scouts to just monitor? No.
FM doesn't have scout.
Nothing.
FM never had scouts because FM depends on the coaches that they certify at the C and B license, A license,
To
who are working with the team and make the recommendations. That's how, when I was the former under-17 national team manager, we get CVs or videos of boys who have played in other clubs, or playing overseas. And that's how our goalkeeper for under-17 was from Australia, who plays for Perth under-15. Right, and he came on his own interest, and we brought him for the centralized training.
So is this system good enough, or should we have a much more
I think
improved?
Now that we have a lot of the B and C licensed coaches who are jobless, right?
Yes.
A few thousand of them, in fact, over the years. I think FM technical department has to find a way to engage all these coaches and send them and look at the leagues that's happening, whether it's Piala Belia or Piala President. Obviously, there's always an issue of payment, right? Allowances to be paid. But that is where we are so different than the European football, because European scouts are full-time job. It's a pro job.
They are attached with the clubs.
They are attached to the youth department, and they travel vastly to look at the players.
Here they don't.
Week in, week out.
Here they don't.
I said here, no. Very much depends on individual watching that particular player, or a star is born from AMD maybe, or from one of the youth leagues that comes about. Yeah.
It's still not very structured. It's just
Not very structured, yeah. That I agree. I have to say that we don't have people going week in, week out at the public fields and looking at them,
It's still with the revelation of the cancellation of the under 23 competition, still going to send major shock in the industry, the coaches, the players, everyone going to fear. But I do see that you need to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
This system had failed. We are going into unknown. Of course, there's going to be fear.
Yeah.
Do you see FM have a role in to sort of telling, okay, things going to be all right. It is scary, but this is the way forward. FM have this job to convince the stakeholders, the clubs, maybe the coaches, the players. How do you see that process happening?
I think, like I said, MFL being the stakeholder of the league, and FM is only a sanctioning body. MFL has a big role to continue this engagement with the clubs. For example, just setting the criterias, right, alone doesn't help. Rajan.
Yes.
Right. If a very simple example. If you have a child that is weak in mathematics, right, and you are screaming and yelling at the child to do well day in, day out, but the child needs support. He needs tuition, he needs extra classes, he needs additional notes, supplies, whatever.
Yes.
And we are not providing.
Yes.
But we are telling, get the A's. How is he going to get the A's when you're not able to provide that support?
Yeah.
So to summarize, this is where the engagement needs to happen. Right, they need to engage with the club, which Dato' Ghani, with due respect, is doing. He's meeting quite often the CEOs and the presidents, because he was the former CEO of the club. Of course, the previous CEO, Stuart, had a different approach. He was far more engaging and whatever not. As they continue to engage, and I think the owners also be responsible. Just be truthful. Be truthful and say, MFL, we don't have the money to play.
That's
Just say it.
The honesty,
right?
that is the key that have been lacking.
Don't give this false hope. You're
Yeah.
not only giving false hope to the industry, not only to the players, the entire industry. You as club owner, you are going to drag your problems with the industry.
But
commercially, the sponsors will say, "Oh, this league is not worth sponsoring."
Yeah.
That's what.
Have you experienced this? I mean, you were on the board.
I served the board for 1.5 years.
Have you
Ajit Pal,
heard
and
about
I've always
sponsors?
been vocal.
Sponsors
I've
do not
always
want to come
spoken
in
my
and
mind.
all that.
No, the sponsors are always happy to come on board, but they're happy to work with MFL. But the issue is always with the clubs.
So they are a bit hesitant.
Right? You come on board, you give $1 million to MFL, you want to do an activation in the stadium somewhere else. and the stadium is not ready, not conducive to do activation, not conducive to bring the fans, right?
So
So this kind of thing, because football is just not about football is 60% what happens, 40% happens on the pitch, and 60% what
Yeah.
happens around it.
The
But
administration.
MFL should have done this from day one when they were established lah. I mean, not only setting criteria, but training and mugging the clubs what to do and all these things lah.
I think it's also the change from FA to FC for people to realize. But if you don't change, we will not get the club licensing. Malaysia was one of the last countries in the AFC club regulation to convert to get the
FCs.
license. FCs, one of the last.
But is state funding still important? I mean, in the league, I don't think.
I think personally, without state funding, the clubs will die.
And most of the clubs are still
Yes.
getting state
Yes.
funding.
This
Yes,
would
to a
be
certain
an
extent.
unpopular opinion. I do feel every state, they have responsibility towards sports in their state,
Yeah.
and football, the stadium, the local city council or Majlis Bandaraya Perbandaran.
Yeah.
You build stadiums to cater for who? The public.
Correct.
So you must come in. When I go to Europe, I talk to the club owners, the CEOs there. They say their city council is very helpful.
Yes.
Here
Yes.
we see that connection. No, you football, you're sendiri. You're on your own. Maybe your MB would give you some funds from the state government.
Yeah.
But you just cannot just give money and that your responsibility doesn't end there. You should bring in a culture of football in your state. They're more than to give money and you solve your problem. This is where I see we lack terribly. There is no engagement of government agencies and state government with a football club. It's your branding. You can come in as a partner.
I think
Why
it
not?
also very much comes down to or boils down to, Rajan, whether the leadership in the state likes the game.
Yes.
If you are a Menteri Besar and you don't have the love for football, you will not be spending the money, or you will
Yeah.
not find the way to get the money.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at the history of Malaysian sports, all those Menteri Besars, I think Ajipar can mention all of them, they all had love for football.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the Selangor MBs.
Yeah, Kedah those days,
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
In Terengganu, for example. All these Menteri Besars had some kind of love for the game. And they were willing to go out of the way to
make
find
sure.
the funds. Today, sadly to say, some states are also struggling financially to pay salaries of their own staff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Economically, they're not doing well. So between paying the salaries of the state federal staff and running a football team, they choose the
Yeah.
no option, no choice.
Yeah, no choice.
We would
Right?
understand.
Yeah, no choice. Yeah.
Sports is not their priority.
Correct.
It is acceptable.
Yeah.
But
But like you mentioned, like Penang, for example, yeah, the Penang Stadium is actually managed by the city council, right? So that budget of managing the stadium comes under the state department, state government,
Okay. Okay.
right? So cleaning, cutting the grass, managing the field, and everything comes under the state department, the state budget, right? And then the team runs basically on salaries, whatever needs to be done, promoting the game and whatever not, So that's why I think Penang has been successfully able to pay the salaries without any delays.
they are sustainable.
And their CFO, the CFO of the Penang FC is also the state finance director.
So no wonder we would see proper
So it's
management.
very
and ma-
properly managed, but also not easy for them. It's not easy for them. Yeah.
Because the public can any time turn around why you're spending our money on a football team.
Exactly. That is where the restriction comes in.
So do you see that educating the public as well? Because I do see that Malaysian, everyone say we are a sporting nation, but in fact we are not.
We are not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we are not. We are not a sporting nation. We are not. Why I say we are not a sporting nation? Because if you are a sporting nation, our stadiums will be full, like what's happening in Australia. Any sport people will come, and obviously now, all the other sports such as young people are playing. Young people don't go to stadium. I am not sure.
Yeah.
You go to stadium, you don't find the teenagers there. They are playing pickleball and paddle and other sports.
Because of the
Right.
ticket prices. So last time when
Ticket
I used to
prices.
go stadium, it was only 5 ringgit.
Yeah.
That was about 30 years plus.
Now it's $30, $35, right? So the scenario of the ecosystem is changing. But very quickly, you look at badminton. Why Malaysian Open can draw
Wow.
65,000 crowd
Yeah.
for the 5 days? Because there are X amount of people playing that game.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
You say football ticket is expensive. You look at badminton. $785 for day 5. People can afford to buy.
Yeah.
So, two different levels of the sport that people need to do some kind of analysis and look at it. Why? Maybe because badminton is having that kind of success.
Okay.
So
Okay.
success always draws attention and
Obviously.
interest. Wow, we had a long session. I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
I had planned for it's my
We have
the
another-
podcast. I think we need to
another
have a
10
part 2.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
I'll be
So
happy to do a
my
part two.
plan was to veer into something else, and having you here, we get a perspective of
Yeah.
from administrative from the FAM and MFL. So it's refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
I hope our listeners would have enjoyed. Yes, it's long, but you guys have to hear it, have to listen to this session and learn the other side of the story. What goes on the other side. I and Ajit, I think we represented what the fans wanted. And having you a different perspective, definitely nice. I hope we learned a lot. Again, thank you so much for
Thank you, Rajat.
taking your
Thank you.
time to
Thank you,
come.
Ajit Pal.
Ajit,
Okay.
same
Thank
for
you very
you.
much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And listeners, again, thanks for listening to our Time Spots on the Beat. I'm your host, K. Rajan. We have Christopher Raj here, my good friend, and my boss, editor Ajit Pal Singh here. We hope you enjoyed our session. You can listen to the podcast on Audio Plus, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you.
Thank you.